Achieving the NBA MVP title appears to be the pinnacle of a basketball player's journey. However, if you fail to finish it when it truly counts, your season may turn bad. In 2016, a small guard may have provided us with the finest illustration. During the 2015-2016 NBA season, Stephen Curry didn't merely excel, he transformed how basketball was played and altered the dynamics of the whole league. It wasn't merely that he was skilled. He made the seemingly impossible appear so easy that anyone could emulate him. Shoot threes from the logo, standard step-backs against two defenders, simple. One-handed bank shots off the backboard without glancing, simply another ordinary Tuesday evening. He turned all our understanding of effective scoring upside down. He was a thin, petite point guard who excelled at sprinting off screens off the ball just to launch three-point shots. He topped the league in scoring with 31 points per game, yet seldom participated in fourth quarters as the Warriors typically had large leads. He achieved the best player efficiency rating, surpassed his previous record with 42 three-pointers, and recorded 50% shooting from the field, 45% from beyond the arc, and 90% at the free throw line. No player's season in basketball history can even be matched to this one. He was a dynamic player in sneakers, yet also a clever, selfless leader who ensured the ball flowed, acknowledged his teammates, and never allowed fame to alter his character. Repeatedly, the most effective lineups in the NBA revolved around Steph Curry and several role players. It was irrelevant who he played alongside as long as everyone was invested. And when the person spearheading the attack was the most groundbreaking offensive tool we had encountered, that became quite simple to achieve. The whole NBA centered on his influence. Defenders extended to midcourt just to stay in the game. Coaches needed to adjust their defensive strategies merely to endure a quarter with him playing. The 2016 Warriors were not simply excellent, they were an actual cheat code, similar to the button combination up, down, left, right, A-B type. They began the season with a record of 24-0, the finest start in NBA history. They concluded the season with a record of 73-9, surpassing the iconic Bulls mark of 72-10. They had scorers, guards, facilitators, but it was Curry who powered the team. Each game resembled a spectacle. Harlem Globetrotters or certain NBA stadiums transformed into concert halls upon his arrival. Famous people came just to witness the crazy thing he would do next. Children nationwide began attempting deep three-pointers before layups and shouting Curry when tossing a paper ball into the wastebasket. Curry dominated the league, and the gap was significant. Upon the arrival of the MVP votes, he was recognized as the first unanimous MVP in the history of the NBA. All voters selected Steph. It was a total victory, a moment that resembled the beginning of a new age. He was not only the top player globally for this season, he was the most thrilling, the most impactful, and the most relentless. The league had never encountered a player quite like this thin little shooter hailing from Davidson. For much of the playoffs, it seemed that the Warriors would end their remarkable season with the ideal finale. They glided past the initial round, faced a minor setback in the second when Curry hurt his knee, yet continued to push on until the Western Conference Finals. There, they faced Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook's Oklahoma City Thunder and were crushed to their knees. Trailing 3-1, the dynasty appeared as if it could fail at that moment. Yet the Warriors transformed into the Warriors. Klay Thompson delivered one of the most remarkable Game 6 performances we've ever witnessed. Curry landed shots in Game 7, and they rallied to take the series in 7 games. They had undergone combat experience. As the finals approached for a rematch with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, it seemed as though the concluding chapter had already been penned. When Golden State gained a 3-1 series advantage, many understood that this series was likely finished. Another victory, and the Warriors would achieve the best record of all time. With the title to support it, Harry would conclude the first unanimous MVP season with a perfect finishing touch. The dynasty came into existence. However, history took a complete turn. Game 5 marked the pivotal moment. Draymond Green received a suspension due to a flagrant foul. Bogut was hurt, and instantly the Cavaliers came alive. LeBron James focused more intensely than ever. He performed as though he had a purpose. Irate, determined, and utterly relentless. He scored 41 points. Kyrie matched his total with 41 points, weaving through the defense and sinking fadeaways as if he were playing a video game. The Warriors appeared different without Draymond. Curry scored 25 points but fouled out in the end and couldn't halt the momentum. Yet, time remained. Game 6 was expected to be the recovery, but instead, the breakdown intensified. In the 6th game, LeBron performed once more. Yet another 41-point masterpiece. Kyrie maintained his success in isolations, while the Warriors' offense turned stagnant. Curry went 8 for 20, missed wide-open three-pointers, and appeared flustered by Cleveland's aggressive defense. Even worse, he began to impose things. Poor passes, rushed shots, and avoidable fouls from a player known for his composure and steadiness. It seemed as though the moment was beginning to consume him. As the game slipped from their grasp, Curry tossed his mouthguard into the stands after fouling out, creating a memorable meme later. The Warriors shifted from invincible to susceptible, and now everything depended on a single last match. Match 7, Oracle Arena. Each camera, each gaze, every bit of pressure focused on the court. It wasn't merely about a single match. It concerned two distinct legacies. The game resembled a bout between heavyweight contenders. Gradual, strained, each point gained. Curry had flashes of brilliance, definitely, but he never established his groove or anything near it. He concluded with only 17 points, shooting 6 of 19 from the floor and 4 of 14 from three-point range. Not even close to what the Warriors required. And at the crucial moment, the Cavaliers seized the lead. Kyrie Irving made the shot, a clutch three-pointer right in Curry's face with less than a minute remaining. Next was LeBron's iconic chase-down rejection of Andre, and perhaps the most astonishing aspect was Kevin Love's last-second perimeter defense on Steph Curry, resulting in a poor shot attempt near the end of regulation. I'm sure these guys still have nightmares about it. And just like that, the aspiration faded. The Cavaliers claimed the championship. The Warriors, boasting 73 wins, a unanimous MVP, and an incredible season, left the court in shock. No team had previously squandered a 3-1 advantage in the NBA Finals before. The team that had changed the record books, the team with Curry at the height of his abilities, was remembered equally for what they failed to accomplish. Although not entirely Curry's responsibility, Draymond's suspension, Bogut's injury, and Harrison Barnes' sudden cold streak contributed, nevertheless, Steph remained the team's leader and face. In the most significant game of the year, he failed to step up as everyone anticipated the unanimous MVP would. He did not manage the offense, he didn't efficiently shoot the ball, he didn't shut. And just like that, the best season in NBA history concluded without a championship. It was surprising, it must have been agonizing, I bet. And it brought to mind that in the NBA, true greatness must complete the task. Finals are great, MVPs can be remarkable, but titles are what truly matter. The 2016 Warriors were unbeatable until they became fallible. Steph Curry had the league under his control, but that championship defeat left a mark. The conversation suddenly fell silent. Steph Curry wasn't an illusion. He successfully preserved his undeniable legend status during his career, but the title of best player in the world and the best team ever hype was clearly rectified. If you're seeing this at the moment, there's an 85% likelihood that you aren't subscribed to the channel, so please ensure to modify that for me. We're aiming for 100K by summer's end, and I'm grateful for all of you viewing. The 2023 NBA season was meant to be the pinnacle of Joel Embiid's career. The year he ultimately quieted his detractors, showed the naysayers, including me, that they were mistaken, and claimed what he felt was rightfully his, the MVP award. For years, he participated in the competition but could never outpace Giannis Jokic. Instead, he found himself hurt and defeated by the time the prize was distributed. In 2023, he changed the narrative. He charged through the regular season. Night after night, he overwhelmed defenders, accumulated points, and lifted the 76ers on his shoulders. He recorded a league-leading average of 33 points, along with more than 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and close to 2 blocks. He was not only scoring, but also defending, leading, and dominating everyone in his way. He ultimately achieved victory. Joel Embiid, the most valuable player of the NBA in 2023. Despite being contentious for certain individuals, he obtained it. He fulfilled every criterion of a winning MVP. He guided his team to a third seed, topped the league in scoring, excelled at every opportunity, and provided us with some thrilling moments along the way. The guy was on. Social media surged. Analysts agreed with nods. Not everyone, but a lot claimed it was ultimately his moment. He probably deserved it, or perhaps just to placate the Joel Embiid supporters during the Jokic-Joel debates. However, there is yet one more chapter remaining either way. In the NBA, the MVP is merely the start. Playoff basketball and regular season basketball are almost like two distinct sports. And as the calendar changed, the next occurrence was rather unfortunate. And let's just say that Philadelphia will need to have faith in the process for a bit more time. It began calmly. The Sixers encountered the Brooklyn Nets in the opening round. Embiid performed admirably, strong figures, although not extraordinary. Then arrived the surprise. In the third game, Embiid hurt his right knee while diving after a loose ball, an LCL sprain. The physician mentioned he was absent from Game 4. The Sixers ultimately swept the Nets, but the warning signals were evident. The MVP was dealing with a troublesome knee, and the playoffs were becoming increasingly challenging. In the second round, they faced the Boston Celtics, a team characterized by size, power, and extensive playoff knowledge that was designed to leverage every resource available to defeat anyone in a 7-game series. Embiid came back in the second game of the series with a support brace. Starting from the initial possession, it was evident that this was not the same athlete who had recently secured MVP honors. He moved at a slower pace than anticipated. His typical explosiveness, the spin moves, the coast-to-coast dribbles, the fierce backdowns were not really present. He appeared rigid, guarded. His jump shot, previously fluid and assured, repeatedly hit the rim with a clang. Boston rarely had to deploy double teams since Al Horford, almost 37 years old, was defending him effortlessly. Embiid was unable to drive to the basket. He was relying on fadeaways and elbow jumpers. Match after match, his performance declined throughout the 7-game series. He scores an average of 23 points each game, which is almost 10 points lower than his regular season averages, and his shooting percentage dropped to 43%. For a large player, particularly one recognized for his control in the paint, that statistic was harsh. The MVP version of Embiid, the player who dominated defenders throughout the season, had officially disappeared. What was left was a reluctant, limping version of himself because of the injury. Then arrived Game 6, the perfect chance. The Sixers had managed to take a 3-2 series lead and were competing at home with the opportunity to eliminate Boston and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in more than 20 years. The audience was charged with energy. Philly could sense it. For 3 quarters, it was a tie. However, in the fourth, with the game and series at stake, Embiid appeared to disappear. He made 4 points in the last quarter. He didn't ask for the ball. He didn't assume control. The Sixers were surpassed in points, and the match quickly got out of reach. They lost 95-86, and suddenly it was 3-3 back in Boston, where the pressure soared, marking the point where the dream completely unraveled. Game 7 was more than just a defeat. It was a breakdown, a disintegration of all that Embiid had established throughout the entire season. He concluded with 15 points. He converted only 5 of his 18 attempts, a poor 27% shooting percentage. With each jumper he made, the Celtics felt a bit more relaxed. He was quite inactive. He was uncertain. His body appeared weighty, as though each movement required strain. He secured just 8 rebounds and made 4 turnovers. While the Celtics gained distance, the cameras frequently focused on Embiid, who appeared sweaty, annoyed, and beaten. The final score was 12-88, a decisive defeat. The season for the Sixers had concluded. The MVP had exited the premises. As the Celtics advanced, the basketball community reflected on the aftermath. Embiid, the most valuable player in the league, tallied 15 points in the most significant game of the season. He missed 13 attempts and was outperformed, outshined, and outclassed. The same player who was unstoppable for 82 games suddenly couldn't score a basket when it was crucial. The media that once celebrated him changed swiftly. Some referred to it as a choke. Some claimed he was never worthy of the MVP to begin with. All the inquiries came back. Is he resilient enough? Is he able to manage pressure? Will he ever guide a team beyond the second round? At the same time, the player who secured second place in MVP voting, Nikola Jokic, continued to excel, kept winning, and was en route to a championship win. The difference was excruciating. One MVP was displaying banners, while the others were at home observing. Embiid has undoubtedly invested heavily in his NBA career to show us glimpses of one of the greatest big men we've ever witnessed. However, as demonstrated during his MVP season, glimpses truly represent the conclusion of the narrative for Joel Embiid. Despite having a season at an MVP level, ensuring his availability during the playoffs has become unattainable, reflecting the unfortunate reality of his career. Although the 2023 downfall was caused by injury, this season appeared to embody all previous issues. Injuries preventing him from being at full capacity or off the court completely, playoff absences, justifiable or otherwise, in another year taking a backseat to the dominant figure who completely controls basketball in 2020. In 2007, Dirk Nowitzki was not merely excelling, he was essentially guiding the Dallas Mavericks on an unstoppable run through the NBA that seemed like payback in action. Following the devastating heartbreak of the 2006 finals, where a 2-0 series advantage transformed into a soul-stirring defeat against the Miami Heat and the formidable trio of D. Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, and the officials, Dirk and the Mavs returned with determination. They weren't furious, they were deliberate, attentive, merciless, and guided by their ruthless German striker. They didn't merely win, they annihilated. Dallas achieved a record of 67 wins and 15 losses, marking the finest performance in the team's history. During a lengthy period in the center of the season, they achieved a record of 52 wins and 5 losses. What the was Dirk thinking, dude? It's not merely dominance, it's historic. They weren't just slipping by teams, they were dominating them completely. Each night, the Mavericks appeared as a flawlessly crafted machine. He recorded an average of 24.6 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 3.4 assists while shooting an impressive 50% from the field, 42% from three-point range, and 90% from the free throw line, becoming part of the highly exclusive 504-90 club, a remarkable achievement in basketball's elite efficiency. It wasn't only the figures, it was the method he used. Dirk had turned into an unstoppable force, excessively tall for wings, excessively centered, and unhurriedly unattainable. His trademark one-legged fadeaway was absolute terror for defenders. A play that seemed like something out of 2K Park, but was genuine and impossible to stop. The Mavericks possessed marksmen, defenders, depth, and coaching. They appeared to be a squad designed to obliterate history. When Dirk was named the MVP, it seemed like a crowning moment rather than merely a prize. The league witnessed his ascent, decline, and comeback, which was sharper than before. However, we had no idea that we were on the verge of witnessing one of the most incredible upsets in NBA history. In the opening round of the playoffs, the Mavericks faced the We Believe Golden State Warriors, a gritty 8 seed that had just barely squeezed into the postseason. On paper, the matchup appeared to be an uneven contest. This marked the first occasion that a 67-win team encountered one that barely exceeded 500, though it was essentially a trap. Golden State won against Dallas in all 3 matchups during the regular season. Don Nelson, Dirk's former coach, guided them and understood precisely where to exploit weaknesses in Dallas's defense. He deployed extremely small lineups, accelerated the tempo to a frenzy, and targeted the Mavericks relentlessly for 48 minutes. The Warriors possessed their unique confidence, guided by Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, and Jason Richardson, supported by a cheering Oracle Arena. They not only thought they could win, they were certain of it. The first game was the morning shoot. Dirk made 4 out of 16 shots. The Mavericks were baffled, uncertain, and amazed. They rebounded in the second game, but when the series shifted to Oakland, the Warriors exploded. Oracle turned into a chaotic environment. The Warriors' intensity engulfed the Mavericks entirely. They overwhelmed Dirk with double teams, crowded him on each reception, and lured him into isolation-heavy, unproductive plays. The shots that had missed all season now ricocheted off the edge. The fadeaway ceased to land. The assurance started to waver. The Golden State team won both games 3 and 4. The Mavericks secured a desperate victory in Game 5, but by then, the Warriors could sense weakness. In Game 6, with their season at stake, Dallas crumbled. Dirk, typically the dependable one, faltered under pressure, totaling only 8 points with 2 of 13 shooting. The Warriors went on a rampage. Steven Jackson made 7 three-pointers. Baron Davis charged down the lane like a freight train. The ultimate score, 111-86, resembled a detonation. Spectators invaded the courts. The underdog achieved what seemed unachievable. It wasn't merely a surprise for Dallas, it was a disaster. The Mavericks secured 67 victories. Dirk was the most valuable player in the league. The Warriors concluded 25 games behind them. No 8 seed had previously accomplished this against a team this formidable. As Dirk left the court that evening, his shoulders were drooped and his eyes appeared empty. In the locker room afterward, he allegedly threw a garbage can against the wall, denting it out of frustration. He wasn't merely beaten, he was embarrassed. Days later, when Dirk formally received his MVP trophy, the occasion seemed inappropriate, uncomfortable, and somewhat harsh. The accolade, typically a celebration, turned into a focus on the shortcoming. There was no procession, no concluding stage, no excitement. Just cameras, applause that resembled a sigh, and a man with a trophy that no longer seemed like a crown. Dirk seemed as if he preferred to be somewhere else, and within a few days, he was. He disappeared to Australia to avoid the commotion, the talk programs, the news stories, and the incessant inquiries. The descent was abrupt. The story turned quickly. From Dirk's year to Dirk's playoff struggles, from MVP to warning example. That sequence, that breakdown, it lingered. For years, it was mentioned each time the Mavericks made the playoffs. For Dirk, it represented something beyond a blemish. It turned into a scar, one that ultimately toughens him, one that showed him how harsh the ascent could be while shouldering the burden of expectations. Years later in 2011, Dirk made a comeback to the finals and triumphed, defeating a formidable Miami super team featuring LeBron, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh. At that moment, he bore scars, he possessed experience, and he carried the answer. He guided Dallas to the championship and finally banished the memories of 2006 and 2007. However, in the narrative of his career, 2007 is still the pivotal moment. The instant he realized that excellence doesn't shield you from failure, that even champions can struggle, and that being the top player in the world means little if you falter during critical moments. Dirk's 2007 season was a basketball work of art that ultimately did not meet expectations. 8 months of supremacy shattered in a single week of turmoil. Despite his eventual redemption, the suffering from that year added significance to it. It was the tempest he couldn't endure, the lesson he needed to grasp, the time that revealed how delicate greatness can become when confidence transforms into stress and stress leads to failure. And when it concluded, the most remarkable aspect was not just Dirk's ascent, but his comeback after the decline. In 1999, Karl the Kid Cuddler remained a powerhouse in the league, constructed like a brick house, robotic and unwaveringly reliable for his age. At 35 years old, he no longer flew high above the rim, but it wasn't necessary for him. His gameplay had evolved into something stark and exact, resembling a device designed for a singular shot, crush opponents into oblivion. After suffering 2 consecutive finals defeats to Michael Jordan's Bulls, the Millman returned post-lockout, resolute in his pursuit of that championship. The season was peculiar, shortened to only 50 games because of a labor conflict, intense and tumultuous. Teams were fragmented, players were fatigued, strategies appeared hurried. Yet in the midst of that turmoil, Karl Malone excelled, guiding the Utah Jazz to a 37-13 record, the highest in the league, and secured his second MVP title. The figures were robust, nothing extraordinary by any measure: 24, 9.4, and 4.1 points per game on almost 49% shooting. Not impressive compared to his earlier years, but decent, I suppose. The pick and roll featuring Stockton continued to be dependable. Utah lacked extravagance. They weren't contemporary, but they were efficient, and Malone was their cornerstone both offensively and defensively. He was intelligent, resilient, and experienced in combat, but being dependable doesn't necessarily imply being the greatest. Yet, despite all that Malone contributed to the Jazz, the MVP seemed more like a recognition of his achievements than a reflection of his supremacy. Electorate recognized a known figure in a leading role and reverted to a story of salvation. However, there were at least two other contenders, Tim Duncan and Alonzo Mourning, who presented stronger cases for the award that year, particularly regarding their influence on both sides of the court. Duncan was just in his second season, yet already seemed like the future of the league. He was the driving force behind San Antonio's matching 37-13 record, averaging 21.7 points and 11.4 rebounds while leading the top defense in the league. His impact on both sides of the court transformed the Spurs entirely, and in contrast to Malone, Duncan was achieving this with a lineup that hadn't experienced significant playoff success together for nearly an entire damn decade. He was elevating San Antonio to the pinnacle of the league. Next was Alonzo Mourning, the emotional and physical centerpiece of the Miami Heat, who recorded an average of 20 points, 11 rebounds, and more than 3 blocks per game while claiming the Defensive Player of the Year award. He was the league's most formidable interior defender, the focal point of one of the best defenses in recent history. If you were forming a team from the ground up and needed to succeed in the harsh and brief 1999 season, there was a valid debate that day whether Duncan would have provided significantly more than Karl Malone, yet Karl was the victor. Perhaps voters felt unprepared to hand over the league's reins to the younger generation. Perhaps due to a season marked by unpredictability, Malone provided a sense of familiarity, a feeling of security. For that reason, he left with the trophy. In the opening round, Malone and the Jazz narrowly got by the Sacramento Kings in 5 matches. He was okay, but lejos de ser dominante. Next, Portland appeared in the second round, a squad full of energy and youth. Rasheed Wallace, Brian Grant, Arvydas Sabonis, a frontcourt unit that stood firm, showed no fatigue, and were indifferent to the histories of their rivals. All at once, Malone's performance began to reflect his age. Obvious. In 5 games, he maintained his typical numbers of 24 and 11, but had a field goal percentage near 40% for a big man, while averaging more than 4 turnovers each game. That mid-range jump shot that had been his staple began to miss, and gradually the Jazz were thrown off their rhythm and eliminated from the playoffs. It wasn't merely the statistics, it was the sensation of the game. Malone didn't appear to be the top player globally. He did not assume control. He did not bring his style of play into the series at all. He failed to evoke fear. His gameplay required more effort than inspiration. His choices were more careful than bold. I wish he had been that careful whenever he engaged in that behavior earlier in his career. Forget it. I suppose, to add to the misery, the finals unfolded like a harsh reflection. Tim Duncan, whom Malone surpassed for the MVP, completely excelled on the big stage. The Spurs played against the New York Knicks, and Duncan took him apart. He had an average of 274 and more than 2 blocks each game. He assumed control, he guided, he shut. Duncan resembled the most valuable player. Malone resembled a man observing from his living room, and that's exactly what he was. And that's the aspect that hurts. MVP does not represent a lifelong recognition. It's not a gold watch for being reliable. It's regarding who dominated the season, who influenced the league. And once the dust cleared, it became evident that Malone's season was more focused on reputation than on regulations. His MVP acceptance also seemed uncomfortable. Arrived post-elimination, solitary on a platform, grinning with clenched jaws. There's no celebration, no playoff achievements to compare with the recognition. Merely an award that abruptly seemed too burdensome to carry. In a season that concluded not with triumph, but with quiet. Reflecting on it, 1999 does not diminish Malone's legacy. He remains one of the greatest power forwards of all time. However, that MVP, it doesn't stand out as much. Not when Duncan rose directly in front of us. Not when Mourning led his team with unparalleled intensity. And not when Malone simply disappeared, when he was meant to be at his highest worth. Prior to the idea of super teams, before MVPs were accompanied by great players and backed by top coaching staffs, there was the earlier Malone-Moses. And in 1982, he was alone. That year, Moses was not only the league's top player, he was an unstoppable natural phenomenon. While others received assistance, Moses' team was barely managing after a finals appearance the previous year. No backup star, no scoring punch from the bench, no clever tactics. Just Moses consistently pushing the Houston Rockets through one of the toughest, most brutal periods in NBA history with only his strength, his drive, and a determination that wouldn't give up. He recorded an average of 31 points, 14.7 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game over 82 games, all while being surrounded by 2 or 3 defenders as if it were routine. For the second consecutive year, he topped the league in rebounding, recorded 66 double-doubles, and ensured the Rockets remained competitive despite the roster's challenges. Houston concluded with a final record of 46 wins and 36 losses. Strong, I suppose, yet not quite impressive. Yet the majority of individuals grasped the reality. Without Moses, that squad would have been fortunate to achieve 25 wins. His supremacy wasn't about showiness. It revolved around reliability, power, and an unparalleled drive to handle the tough tasks while also making every other shot. Recognized as the MVP not due to his team's excellence, but because of his own. While other stars had systems revolving around them, Moses embodied the system. He battled through contact, punished teams on the boards, and made rivals suffer for 48 minutes each and every night. In a league packed with skilled big men, Moses remained unique. He was doing more than just rebounding. He was dominating whole matches by controlling the entire painted zone. He didn't require the ball to be delivered to him in the ideal location. He went and retrieved it. From missed shots, from disrupted plays, from pure determination, he kept pushing. Match after match, evening after evening, he delivered the same intensity, the same dedication, and the same results. It wasn't always beautiful, it wasn't made for highlights, but it functioned. Then arrived the postseason, and everything simply fell apart. In the first round, the Rockets competed against the Supersonics in a best-of-3 series that allowed for no mistakes. Seattle boasted a seasoned lineup, guided by Jack Sigma, and was well aware of the right approach. Remove Moses from the game and let the other players in Houston try to win. They compressed the paint, dispatched assistants on every contact, and challenged the Rockets' supporting players to take a shot. Moses still achieved 25 points and 15 rebounds per game, but his shooting percentage dropped to 38% from the field, an indication of the extent of pressure he faced. Each possession turned into a struggle. Each action faced 2 defenders, occasionally 3. And even though Moses continued to work hard, the backing just wasn't available. The Rockets failed to create space, couldn't compete with Seattle's bench strength, and lacked solutions. They were defeated in the series 2-1. And just like that, the MVP season came to an end. The response wasn't severe, yet it was revealing. Moses' greatness was not questioned by anyone. He had already done a lot for that, but the premature departure created an unusual quietness surrounding his MVP season. He was the top player in the league, yet the playoffs didn't provide him the opportunity to demonstrate it. There's no second chance, no unclear contest, no redemption story, just a tough conclusion to a season filled with dedication. It was a calm, disappointing finish for a storied season. Still, in certain respects, that 1982 season continues to stand out, perhaps even more so due to its challenges. It's simple to commend MVPs who guided 61 teams filled with all-stars and strong rosters. It's more challenging to identify a player who led a team without any support. Yet that's precisely what Moses accomplished. He lacked the equipment that many MVPs depend on, yet he topped the league in rebounds, averaged over 30 points per game, participated almost every night, and provided Houston a chance to compete when no one else was able. It stood out as one of the most genuine displays of individual talent the NBA had ever witnessed. Moses certainly didn't remain down for long. The following year, he teamed up with Julius Erving on the Philadelphia 76ers and finally received the backing he required. The outcome? A standout playoff journey in NBA history concluded with a championship and an additional MVP award. However, that moment doesn't feel as impactful without the suffering of 1982. That year, Moses demonstrated the impact one player could have solo. He demonstrated that determination, power, and hard work still counted, even in a league shifting towards superstars and organization. Ultimately, Moses' 1982 season represents not only a statistical success, but also a narrative of perseverance, a testament to what it signifies to bear responsibilities, to guide, and to battle, even when the challenges are immense, the backing insufficient, and the attention lacking. He might not have advanced deep in the playoffs, but he exceeded what anyone else could have achieved with his resources. That year was a lesson in achieving the unachievable repeatedly. During his second season, Bill Russell was already being carved into the legacy of basketball history. After winning a championship as a rookie, an achievement rarely accomplished, he quickly asserted himself in the league with a level of defense that had never been seen before. In an NBA period fixated on scoring, Russell changed the story completely. He transformed the paint into a restricted area for flights. He bounced the ball like a device created for disorder. During the 1957-1958 season, he averaged an incredible 22.7 rebounds per game, a nearly unfathomable figure, even by the 1950s standards. That path, his skill to control the tempo, initiate fast breaks, and dominate possessions earned him the league's MVP title. In numerous ways, it seemed correct. He secured the Boston Celtics like an anchor in turbulent waters. Despite averaging minus 16.6 points per game, the league perceived something unique in Russell, worth that wasn't consistently reflected on the statistics. However, that didn't imply the shortcomings weren't genuine. Despite being highly effective defensively, Russell was still developing on the offensive side. His 40% shooting percentage was concerning, particularly for a center whose attempts were nearly all taken at the basket.
His post-game wasn't refined. He wasn't a reliable scorer in half-court situations. His worth was more in contributing to his team's effort, screening, rebounding, transitioning quickly, delivering the additional assist. He was the engine, not the tool. When the Celtics made it to the NBA Finals once more in 1958, those constraints were not only apparent, but also deadly. Confronted by Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks in a rematch of the finals from the previous year, Russell encountered a new type of battle. Pettit was more than a scorer, he was a fireballer. While Russell overwhelmed rivals with his reach and foresight, Pettit countered with skill and tenacity, delivering a remarkable exhibition throughout the series. Russell's scores fell to merely 14 points per contest on a dismal 35% shooting from the field as a 6'9" tall player facing off against men finishing their jobs from their 9 to 5 at the construction site. A sharp decline from his previously constrained regular season effectiveness. Although he continued to grab rebounds, it wasn't sufficient to offset the offensive burden he was unable to manage. At the same time, Pettit was delivering one of the most outstanding NBA Finals showings of all time. He scored an average of 29 points and grabbed 17 rebounds during the series. In the crucial Game 6, he delivered an incredible 50-point performance against one of the most intimidating defenses ever. It was the type of performance that changed legacies. With Russell hurt during the series and unable to play in that last game, Boston simply couldn't withstand the onslaught. The Hawks won the championship 4-2. Even though Russell's absence in Game 6 provided Boston fans with a reference, the statistics from the entire series revealed a wider narrative. Russell was thoroughly outperformed by Pettit's, and not just a little, but significantly on the scoreboard and vastly in terms of offensive influence. Reflecting on it, the 1958 MVP seems somewhat contradictory. Indeed, Russell led the top team in the league. Indeed, his defense and rebounding were exceptional, even groundbreaking, but he wasn't the most well-rounded player that season. He wasn't even the top player on the court during the finals. Pettit existed. With legends such as Elgin Baylor joining the league and other stars like Dolph Schayes and Bob Cousy still making an impact, one could contend that Russell's MVP was largely about symbolism, a tribute to Boston's ascent and Russell's game-changing brilliance rather than total dominance. Certainly, Russell would eventually secure 11 championships and permanently change how success was evaluated. He was the quintessential superstar who prioritized the team, the central figure around which one of the sport's most legendary dynasties revolved. However, in 1958, the second-year center was still developing into the role of the most valuable player. The shortcomings in his offensive play became particularly evident when it was most critical. The MVP of that year didn't leave with a crown. He hobbled away from the courts without a title, outmatched by an opponent whose points spoke volumes. Petty received the ring, while Russell obtained the trophy. And despite all the greatness Russell would ultimately attain, the 1958 season stands as a time when his personal recognition surpassed his playoff results. A reminder that even legends face challenges while evolving. Thanks for tuning in if you've reached this point, and as usual, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.